planning to, if it's okay with everybody, record the session. Now, whenever I say record, and I sound as if I know what I'm doing, but I don't really, there's a couple of people who can't join us today, and they had asked, might it be possible to record it? So I have found the record button, but I just wanted to check with everybody first. What we would probably do is just send it to those couple of people who did come. And the plan maybe would be as well to upload it onto YouTube, onto Cullybackey's channel. Now, again, I sound as if I know what I'm talking about, but I don't really. But anyway, if you have any objections to that, just give me a wee shout afterwards. I'll not be doing anything for a day or two, but just give me a wee shout if you're not sure about that. I'll try not to get faces in it. What I'm trying to do is bring just Jenny up on the main screen, and your faces probably wouldn't be in it otherwise, or they may be to the side, I'm not sure. But it's just to make you aware of that. The other thing that I sometimes do is take a wee screenshot just at the start. And just maybe put a wee thing up on Facebook just to say, about the event. So if anybody's any objections to that, just give me a wee shout. Again, I'll not be doing that for until at least later on this afternoon. Okay, so it's great to see everybody today. I know some faces, but there are quite a few faces I don't know. So maybe just to say, my name's Joanne Brown-Kerr, and probably if you've emailed through, it'll be me that's answered the email and sent you the link. I'm involved with, I do a wee bit of work with Cullybackey Community Partnership, who have organised these events, these Zoom events. This is actually one of 4 Zoom events that are going on at the minute. And Cullybackey Community Partnership, and I see Margaret's here. Margaret Murphy would be one of the main ladies involved in Cullybackey Community Partnership. If you want to give us a wee wave, Margaret, I don't know whether you can see Margaret or not, but Margaret would be the main lady involved with the partnership. I would like to thank Mid and East Antrim Borough Council, who, without their help and support, both financially and otherwise, we probably couldn't do a whole lot of the things that we do. So a big thanks to Mid and East Antrim Borough Council. I had mentioned just very briefly at the start, but just what I would suggest, if you're happy enough, is that you mute yourselves. If you know how to do that, there should be a wee button somewhere which says mute. It's really just, it's good to have no background noise just whenever Jenny's speaking. So if you're happy enough to do that, that's great. I just want to mention the next session we have. I said it's one of 4 sessions, and this is the 3rd one, and the last one is next Thursday at the same time at 12 o'clock, and we have Liz Weir. Now, some of you may have heard of Liz Weir, some of you maybe not. Liz is quite a well-known international storyteller. She is brilliant. If you haven't heard her, she is really, really good fun, and she'll be talking about some local places that you'll know of. So definitely, if you can, tune in next week. Just send me an email and I'll send you the link back for next Thursday. So definitely join us there. I'm saying that's the last Zoom event. Strictly, that's not true. What we're actually doing at the minute is putting together a new programme of events. Now, I know there's quite a lot of things out there on Zoom at the minute, and unfortunately, that's just the way we have to do things. It would be lovely to have you all in a room and gathered together and be able to do things as normal, but I think it's going to be a week or 2, month or 2, maybe longer before we get back to normal. So I suppose we'll have to try and get used to this whole Zoom business. But what I'm asking for is ideas. If you have any ideas of anything that you would like to hear about, ideas for speakers, ideas for maybe activities to do on Zoom, anything at all. If you have any ideas at all, if you give me a wee shout, send me a wee email or drop me a wee note or send me a message, whatever, then we would be very grateful, and we'll try and put together a good programme of events. So we'll keep you updated on that. Keep an eye on Facebook, or send us a wee message or give us a wee phone anytime. Okay, our main speaker today, Jenny, I would like to thank very much Jenny for taking time to spend 45 minutes or an hour or so with us today. I know Jenny's going to chat to us about really, about the situation we're in at the minute, and maybe how things have changed and what she's doing at the minute, and a wee bit about using our food we have in the store cupboards at the minute and what we have in the fridge, and maybe ideas of just how to use. So looking forward to that. And also as well, Jenny's very kindly agreed to give away 5 signed, her most recent signed cookbooks. So we've had quite a lot of questions coming in, and then at the end, or maybe afterwards, Jenny will let us know which 5 will have been drawn out for that, for the signed cookbook. So thank you very much for that. So Jenny, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to yourself. Thank you.
Okay, listen, I would say good morning. I suppose we're into the afternoon now, everybody. And it's lovely because there's quite a few faces there that I recognize. So nice to see those there. And thank you for asking me to come and do this. It's maybe getting myself organized this morning. And I suppose that's one of the things at the moment, that through this lockdown, one day seems to melt into the next day and into the next day, unless you sort of make definite sort of determined effort to do all sorts of things. So this is nice to be doing this morning, and hopefully I can answer some of these lovely questions that have come in. Feel free, Joanne, if you want to interact and ask me anything, or if any of the faces in the background suddenly say, ask us such and such a thing, please feel free to do all of that. And probably we will turn into a little bit of a discussion and all sorts of interesting things as well. But I suppose I, like everybody else today, we're in lockdown. And probably when you think about it, it's almost a year since this started. And, you know, when it started sort of March last year and the sun was shining bright, and I thought, well, happy days, I'm going to get out here now and I'm going to do all these things that I've meant to do, all the things in the garden, clear out all the cupboards, put things into folders and into files that I'll suddenly say, at least I know where they are. And it was a bit of a novelty for the first couple of weeks, and then you sort of let it all go by the wayside. But here we are again, and I have decided this time that from Boxing Day until now, there's a real strong agenda of different things that I'm trying to do and going to do and get into order. And one of them has been in the garden, which has been lovely. Now, I know looking out today, it's really nice. And I've been out doing all sorts of things, like, believe it or not, blowing leaves 2 days ago. It didn't get all the leaves lifted from the autumn. And if any of you know where we live up here, there's quite a few trees around. So doing things like that, doing lots of things in gardening and sort of getting things organized from there. I, like everybody else, Christmas came and went, and you go through all the motions and did everything that everybody else did, and sort of maybe did more shopping online and did an awful lot less. And strangely enough, obviously this Christmas, because some of our kids live abroad, one of them lives in Holland. We have a son, Peter, who's got 3 kids, who lives there, married a Dutch girl. We have our daughter, Jane, who lives in Edinburgh, who married a Scottish guy. And we always end up with one at home. So we have Robert, who just lives down the road here on the farm. But obviously with lockdown, we couldn't all get together with everybody, and Jane and Peter didn't get home. So we have a bubble with my sister Rosie, who's an ex-PE teacher. So this year it was very, very different. I decided this year that normally when we do Christmas dinner, I seem to do an awful lot of the cooking and everybody comes here. I suppose maybe they think I know how to cook and it'll be no problem and I'll be able to do all of that. So this year was totally different, and I thought, well, let's do something different. And so what we did, there were just the 3 of us for Christmas lunch this year, and I was cooking at home. And we thought, got up in the morning and went for a lovely walk away down to Murlough Bay, just outside Ballycastle, and went for a walk away along the beach, along that beautiful little path, and then came back and then cooked lunch about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. In fact, we were back before that. So for the first time ever, I got a chance to sit down and watch the Queen's speech. And it was lovely because you weren't in a panic. You weren't cooking for about 20 or 25 people. I always remember my mum one Christmas cooking for 45, and we had trestle tables and all sorts of things up. So I have to say Christmas this year was really quite easy and quite simple, and all very relaxed and calm. People say, what else am I doing? Well, obviously cooking away. I am still doing a little bit of work, but obviously like this on Zoom. And I've been doing a little bit of filming, again, in the same sort of way with some of the people that I work with and different things. I run a cookery school as well up here, which is great fun, but that's had to close down. We haven't had anybody since I think the first week in December. We managed to get a couple of weeks fitted in there when we were out of lockdown. But that has been closed right down, and I think will not be open probably. Well, we just don't know. Like everybody else, we don't know what's happening. And I think one of the things we all try to do at the moment is to be positive. And one of the other ones is really important, is try not to eat too much. I don't think there's anybody that's not sort of having that wee extra scone or that wee extra something in there, or that wee cup of tea in the middle of the afternoon when you think, oh, sure, we'll have another wee cup of tea and go from there. And lots of those lovely questions that people have sent in and asking me all sorts of things. And what have I been doing? Have I been coming up with new recipes and all sorts of different things? Well, I suppose the one thing I would say to that is probably yes. I used to get referred to as your wee woman on the television who makes things with those things that they have in their cupboard. And you didn't have to go out and find all those exotic things or list of ingredients that nobody had ever heard tell of. It was good, basic, down to earth, simple food. And that was actually the thinking behind the whole TV program and the whole TV series, because when the producer came to visit me one day and we were in the process of building the house here, she had this idea, it would be lovely to do it from our own home. And so we sort of set about gathering up pots and pans and dishes and begged and borrowed from all our friends. And so it was a mixed match of everything that we had around. You didn't have to have your dinner set where everything matched. You didn't have to have the top of the range, this, that, or anything else. It was all about down to earth, ordinary things. And in a strange way, the food reflected that. We were making things that were very ordinary, very down to earth, simple things. And they were simple situations that we tried to create. And it was actually more than cooking, because it was trying to put people into situations that they were all in. And for example, at Christmas time, when we did a Christmas program, we didn't go out and go off to the shops and spend loads and loads of money and buying all sorts of decorations. We went out, we got the wellies on and took a walk out around the fields and came back with the holly, the ivy, the laurel and the spruce, and decorated the house with those sorts of things, and made Christmas gifts with things that you had and that sort of ordinary thing. So back to the food. The food was very simple. I remember doing a program called Mother Hubbard's Kitchen, which was great fun because it was old Mother Hubbard who went to the cupboard and there was nothing there but the bone. And so we tried to make things that were using very, very little and putting them together. And that is sort of stuck and still is. There are some interesting things in the pipeline for next year, hopefully looking at something to do with obesity. Now that we've got everybody fattened up, we're going to try and thin them all down, but in a very realistic way, come up with ideas that everybody could achieve without going through too much scientific knowledge that we're all bombarded with. And we know we have to listen to it and we know it's all out there. But, you know, even something as simple as, in fact, somebody had sent in a nice query today about making a shepherd's pie. But something as simple as taking a shepherd's pie and show how you could really reduce the calories, reduce the cooking time, show different things that you could put together, and all those things that we're sort of being told today that we should be doing, like supporting all the local farmers and all the local industry, using the local potatoes, using the local vegetables, maybe carrots and parsnips, and grating them up and putting them into the potatoes to get more vegetables into our diet. Maybe sort of cutting down on how you cook, and in fact, in a simple way, even cooking without putting oil into the pan. Lots more vegetables, lots more onion, a good handful of spinach in there. And then when it comes to things like sauces and different things, how can you get that bit of extra flavor in there without filling it up with salt, or what can you do? So those are the simple sort of things that people are sort of looking for. And in fact, not just in savory things, but in puddings and desserts and all sorts of things that we all love and we all need. And let's be honest, we all need that biscuit and that chocolate biscuit and all those things from time to time. And I'm as guilty as anybody else out there. So that's one of the things that's on the horizon for this year. And later on, obviously, with the cookery school, which is just here in the house at the barn, which is the old apple barn at the back of the house. We normally have about 27 people each night. They come to the house and it's lovely. Christmas time, not this year, but last year, we always have the carol singers in the hallway. We get the Academy and Ballymena, they've come out and they sing. And we have the fire lit and we have nice hot drinks and little canopies in the drawing room. And then we move over to the barn and then we take a sort of a menu which is themed around whatever it might be. It might be cooking a Christmas dinner with local ingredients, or Christmas party food, or desserts for Christmas, or people with specialized diets. For example, we've lots of things on vegan. People are looking for lots of vegetarian ideas and things like that. So it's all good fun. We cook up all the food. You don't have to do any work. It's more of a demonstration. And then everybody gets a chance to eat it and sample it at the end. So that all goes very well. So that and other bits and pieces, as I say, I'm sort of not planning, sort of I'm having a bit of a rest of the brain at the minute, which is quite nice. So it's quite good. But thank you for all your questions, because I think we'll move on to some of these, because these will cover probably a lot of different things that we're all thinking about at the moment and so on. And they were really very varied and really quite interesting. And I'm going to have a list of them here. So I'm going to start off with one of the nice easy ones, first of all. And it was from the lady who wanted to know all about the chocolate. And I have your names all written down here, so I will get them all right in a moment or two. Wanted to know, how can she melt her chocolate without it going grainy? Oh, well, we do lots of chocolatey recipes here, and melting chocolate is something that can be an absolute disaster. The one thing I would say is, everybody says, make sure you buy a good quality chocolate, one that's slightly got a good high cocoa content. And there's so many different ways you can do it. And it depends if you're in a hurry or not. The quickest way is to put it in a bowl and put it in the microwave. And it'll melt down that way if you can set your microwave properly and be better at the technology than I am. I find that's probably not the best way. The other way you can do is, some people will put it into an oven and leave it just to sort of melt down that way. You can put it over a pan of warm water, which I think is probably the best way. Now, I have a fancy thing here called a double saucepan, and it was just one of the things we used in the program. And it was a Le Creuset saucepan with water in the bottom, and then there was a little saucepan on top, and you put the chocolate into that, and you just, over a low heat, left it to melt down. Now, the secret, I think, in melting chocolate is to do it really, really slowly, and for lots of different reasons. Because if you do it really slowly, you'll find that it's not going to harden up with you again very quickly as soon as you've got it melted. And if you're using it in recipes, and we use quite a lot of chocolate in making cheesecakes and those lovely sort of chocolate fondant puddings that are really, really nice. But if it's a cheesecake and you're going to add chocolate to, say, a white chocolate cheesecake, if your chocolate's really, really warm when you come to pour it in, you'll find that the whole thing's going to set with you completely. And what you really want to do is to leave it just to melt down really, really slowly, and then lift it off the water, leave it to sit until it's almost cold. And on doing it nice and slowly, you find that it will not set up with you again. It'll just stay nice and runny. So when you come to pour it into recipes, I simply say it behaves itself. And that's probably the best one, the best way that I find with that one. So I'll just see who that person was. That was, so we've got our chocolate. Alma. Well done, Alma. Like I said, I've had lots of disasters with chocolate. So is that Alma? There we are. Yeah, good. Right, that was the first one. Another one that was really common. Well, there was a lovely one here talking about meat and shepherd's pie. Was the lady who made a shepherd's pie. Who was that? That was, got her name down here.
Hillary.
Hillary, good Hillary. Shepherd's pie, good for you, using the leftover roast. And obviously when you got a roast left over on a Sunday or at the weekend or whatever, the meat can be quite dry. You were very good. You put it through the mincer and did all sorts of things with it. We make a shepherd's pie here with pulled beef. We buy a piece of, I'm going to come on to this in a moment. We buy a piece of brisket, which is one of those really cheap cuts of meat. And in fact, if you bought a roast of brisket, it'll cost you a third or a quarter of what you would pay for a sirloin roast or anything like that. And the secret in cooking it is cooking it really, really slowly in the oven. Now, it might take 2 to 3 hours, maybe even a little bit longer. Or if you have a stove which is on all day, it's absolutely perfect. But the secret there is to let the meat cook so nice and slowly. And in fact, when you have it cooked, it's almost like a Sunday roast where you've overcooked it and you think, goodness gracious, it's all going to fall apart. And when it falls apart, it's lovely because we just pull it apart and we use that to make a shepherd's pie. But back to yours, because where you had the leftover roast, you put it through the mincer and you had that lovely sort of minced beef there that you were going to put in, and you said it ended up being really dry. What you need to do there is to put loads and loads of liquid into it. It's almost like making a lasagna. if you make a lasagna and you don't have it almost bubbling over at the sides, it tends to be quite dry inside. You asked what can you add to it? Well, obviously stock is really, really good. If you're a bit of stock cube, which people use, and there's so many really good stock cubes there. I add all sorts of other interesting things, and I've picked a few of them up here just to show you which I add to different things. But tomato puree is quite good. One of those sun-dried tomato pastes are also very good. Balsamic vinegar is a great thing to add to it. I've just got I lifted some of these things off the shelf here. Balsamic vinegar, it's a vinegar which obviously there's no oil in it and there's less fat in there. Even a little bit, as I said, sun-dried tomato paste stock. And if you want to thicken it up, obviously there's a product with a name quite like mine, which is really good and really handy. But there's another product, and I should have brought it with me, but they're called McDougall's thickening granules, and you should look out for these the next time you're in the supermarket, because there is a little blue tin. You'll find it on the baking aisles of the supermarkets, and they're like little white, just like a little white powder. And the great thing about that is if you want to thicken it up, you don't have to blend it in the pot first with a wee bit of cold water so that it's going to, you know, not turn it going lumpy. You can just take these granules, sprinkle it over the top, really thickens it up, doesn't discolor it in any shape or form, and it just works really, really well. So what I would say to you is this, and you probably want quantities. Probably can't give you quantities because I don't know what size your pan is or how much you're cooking. But what I would say to you is just use your judgment. It's a bit like sell-by dates. I mean, we shouldn't be giving this advice to anybody, but you know, common sense is a wonderful thing, and we do know, you know, what's going to be fine. And as somebody said on TV the other day, and I thought, goodness, she'll get smacked for that one, but she said, just use your nose and you'll know if it's safe or not. But it's a good guideline. But with something like that, you will know you want to have lots of liquid in it so that when you put it in the oven with your potatoes on top, it should be really almost bubbling over at the side. So don't be scared to put in, to say, a wee bit of stock, wee bit of tomato puree. There's a lovely thing called passata, which is sieved tomatoes. Doesn't have any flavor, which is really quite good. It doesn't have any additives, is really what I mean. But a wee drop of balsamic vinegar is really, really good. Even a little bit of soy sauce or something like that. And I have another magic product here, which I'm going to show you. And this was one of the products that I found that I use quite a bit. It's called harissa paste. Now, it's a new ingredient. It just adds a lovely, lovely flavor. It's got a little hint of spiciness about it. If I was to say, what does it taste like? It's like all those lovely things all combined together, like a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of tomato, those sorts of nice things that really add flavor to a pot of stew or something like that. Or even if you're cooking a pound of mince, put a wee drop of that into it as well. So don't be scared to put lots of things in. And say stock cubes are great now because you can get the ones with low salt or no salt in them, and they're really good. And as I say, those McDougall's thickening granules, look out for them because they're not just good in stews and things. They're really good if you're making, wait till the sun comes out and we get all these fruits picked, and you're maybe making remember those lovely sponge fruit flans we used to make in the wee tin, and then you used to turn it out and you put mandarin oranges and different things, and you made a syrup and you thickened it up and put it over the top with all the juice. But those wee granules are great because it was like arrowroot that you use to thicken up. But these granules are great because they don't discolor it or flavor it in any shape or form. So that's another wee one I would look out for there. So that was that Hillary? Who was that one from?
Yeah, Hillary. Yeah,
Hillary, right. Still in the same lines of cooking, there was the lady with the leftover turkey. Was that Teresa Graham? Teresa? I've got the right name there. Yep.
that's right.
Leftover. Yeah, we have a great recipe for that one. Really, really good one. And in fact, it was one we did at the cookery school on most of our events, and it was lovely. And whoever wins this or wins these books, this recipe is in this book, the latest one, and it's under the section. It's got a fancy name, but let me tell you what it is. And this is the recipe that I would use for leftover turkey, for lots of different things. It's it was called a winter crusted tart with turkey. And then you could put all sorts of things on top of it. You could put potatoes, you could put phyllo pastry, that's that lovely one that has no calories in it, or you could even put pasta. Now, if we had a plate here of turkey that you've had in the freezer and you've brought it out, obviously it has come off the bones of the turkey on Boxing Day or whenever, when you've finished it all up. And you've peeled it all off and it's sitting there and it's just looking, it's got no color, it's got probably not a lot of flavor or anything about it, and you want something different. Well, there's all the usual things that we did. You know, we sort of made curries, we made casseroles and all sorts of different things. But what I would do with it is this: if you've chopped it up, chop it up into nice little chunks, not too much. And without giving you the quantities, and hopefully I think we have probably, well, quite a few people will see who these books go to. But I would sort of bring the turkey back to life in a pan with a little bit of onion, red onion and white onion. I sometimes even add a wee, I'm always adding vegetables to things in order to sort of make things that little bit healthier. You could add a little bit of chopped up peppers, any color at all, a red one, a green one, a yellow one. Again, I put a wee handful of spinach in there. And then with that turkey that's sort of coming back to life. Now, I know it's cooked already. So what I would do is I would start off putting all the vegetables into the pan, cooking those first, then adding that little bit of turkey to it. Now, how are you going to bring it back to life? Again, the same ingredients that I talked about. I would add a little bit of soy sauce. I would add a little bit of balsamic vinegar to it, which is this one here. A little bit of stock, a little bit of tomato paste or sun-dried tomato paste or any of those things. Just bring it up until you have a lovely, almost sort of liquid. It's almost like a casserole more so than anything else. And then over the top of that, we put phyllo pastry. Those are those sheets you buy, which are, if you hold them up, they're almost translucent. And just crunch that all over the top of it, and you have a really nice sort of low-calorie pie there, which works really well. That's one of my favorite ways to do it. The other thing, there's another recipe that's quite nice, and I called it a celebration chicken one, and it was a lovely recipe for the summer because you could make it using cooked leftover chicken, and it's just chopping up all the chunks of the chicken or the turkey, putting it together again with lots of fruits and vegetables. I put a bit of celery into it, a little bit of onion. You can put grapes into it, you can put sweet corn into it. You can put whatever vegetables and fruits and think. You could even put a little bit of apple into it, all mixed up together with a lovely light mayonnaise. And you can go for a light mayonnaise, or you can go for the ones that's really, really low in calories. Mixing it together with a little bit of curry paste and a little bit of apricot jam. And that gave it a fabulous flavor when that was all mixed together with the cold chicken or the cold turkey. And then put with some lettuce or spinach leaves or whatever you want to put around the outside of it. You could also do that you could heat it up slightly and serve it with rice if you fancy doing that instead. So have a go at those two. Those might work for you. Getting hungry, Joanne?
I am. I'm starving.
It's
really nice.
And listen, if anybody there wants to ask anything else, please feel free, keep going, and I'll plow through all of these and see where we are. Now, the lady with the Manchester pudding, was that Margaret? Margaret Murphy? Was that her recipe? Margaret, I think I know the recipe you're talking about because it was, is she probably with you there? Is it the one with the breadcrumbs and there was a meringue on top of it? And you know, that was one of our favorite puddings growing up at home, if it was Manchester pudding. What I think it's called today is Queen of Puddings. And it was the recipe that I put into the very first book that I wrote, which was High Days and Holidays. Gosh, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that one was. You'll say, Jenny, where you go and get your walking stick there. But I think it was that recipe. And you know, it was, the reason we did that one was because it was, again, a lovely low cost, simple pudding that you could make. And a bit like bread and butter pudding, you know, where it's a lovely thrifty one where you can make it up with the bread that's gone a bit sort of off, not blue molded, but slightly stale. It comes back to life. But this one was made with breadcrumbs. It was milk in the pan with a little bit of lemon rind in it, a little bit of vanilla popped in there as well, a little bit of sugar. So you warmed up the milk in the pan with all those things, then put the breadcrumbs into it, and then you added a couple of egg yolks to it just to beat together. But it's not too hot, otherwise it'll turn into scrambled egg. And then that goes into an oiled or a greased dish, and you pour that in, and then that goes into the oven to set. So you end up with this lovely sort of, it sounds a bit sort of like, remember panada? They used to feed you whenever you wouldn't eat your dinner and do all sorts of things, which was sort of egg or bread steeped in milk and things like that. So it sort of sets beautifully with the vanilla and the lemon in it. And then over the top of that, you can spread raspberry jam. Now, if you're very fancy, you can sieve the raspberry jam, but I like eating all those wee seeds that you have in it anyway. And spread all the jam over the top of it. And then you put a layer of meringue on top of it. And I have a funny feeling that might just be the pudding that you were talking about. I think she said it was Manchester pudding. And funny, in the new book, the latest one that we wrote, I put a new version of that in, which I made for as an Easter pudding, because again, the same thing, the milk, the vanilla, the lemon, the breadcrumbs going in go the eggs to beat it up, which helps it to set. And then you obviously use the egg whites to make the meringue. But instead of putting raspberry jam in it, I put lemon curd over the top, which brought out that lovely lemony flavour. And then when it came to the meringue, we just beat up the meringue, but put a wee bit of brown sugar into it, which turned it into a lovely sort of chewy brown sugar meringue. And you could add hazelnuts and almonds and all sorts of things like that to it as well. And again, it was a really cheap pudding to make because, as I say, it was just eggs and breadcrumbs and a wee bit of jam that you had in the cupboard. So there you are. That's, I think, hopefully that's the one. Does it sound like it? I don't know if the person's with you. Don't know. Anyway, that was Manchester pudding.
Yes, yes. I think you've got it right, Jenny.
Oh, it's you. How are you? I didn't realise that was you. Well done. I think that's it. It's on high days and holidays. A lot of these recipes are also on jennybristow.com on the website. So if you zoom in there, you might even find that one. And I will put, after today, I'll get some of these extra ones put up onto the website that we're maybe talking about. And so people can go and visit those ones. The one about the turkey that I was talking about, it's on the website. If anybody has leftover turkey in the freezer and wants to bring it out and do something with it, that might work. So good luck with that one. I love that pudding. I always made it for Mother's Day. It was my mother's favorite pudding. And we just loved it. So that was that one. So there you are. Another one, as I said, bread and butter pudding. It's another one that's really, really popular. And again, from a healthier point of view, which I think everybody is sort of just at the minute being very aware and very conscious of, a lot of these recipes, you don't have to follow recipes 100%. You can make your own little changes in there. I would very often make bread and butter pudding with low-fat milk. Now, I know some recipes you look at, you'll see there's maybe half a pint of double cream in it or 8 ounces of butter and different things like that. And when we made it at the cookery school, we used starch-reduced bread, one of the nice sort of slimline breads, and just butter it very, very lightly. Or even what works quite well is, rather than standing butter in the bread, if you melt it in a wee saucepan, and then when you have the bread in the pan, you can just pour that little bit of butter over the top of it. We added sultanas to it. We added a wee bit of ginger, which is that nice sort of stem ginger, which is good for your digestion. Sultanas, a little bit of ginger, a little bit of lemon. And then obviously the custardy mixture that goes over the top, you can make that with low-fat milk. It has egg yolks in it and a tiny little bit of sugar, which you can add to it. Mix those all together, heat it up in a saucepan until it sort of starts to thicken up slightly, almost like a custard. And then when you pour that over the bread, if you leave it to sit for about 10 minutes before you put it in the oven, what happens is the bread absorbs all that lovely saucy liquid, and you end up with a lovely light bread and butter pudding that's almost like creme caramel with bread in it. You've got this lovely light layer of eggy custard, rather than something that sometimes can come across as being a wee bit stodgy. So have a go at that one too. And as I say, that's also in here in the book, so you'll be able to have a little go at that, all these people who win these from there. So good luck with the Manchester pudding. You've got me hungry now. I might just do that one this Sunday and go from there. Good. Right.
Lovely.
Right, where are we off to next? Risotto. Gosh, there are lots of questions about risotto. I love risotto. I suppose different things, people looking for really nice, simple recipes. This was probably one of my favorite ones here, which was, I'll show you a little picture of that one. Don't know whether you can see it or not. But it was, it's more the technique involved, I think, with the risotto that people were concerned about here. You can put anything almost into risotto. This one had a little bit of pumpkin or those sort of squashes that you still see in the shops. There's acorn squash and butternut squash and things like that. a wee bit of bacon in it, and lots of mushrooms in it. This one it's got a fancy name. It's sort of a roasted pumpkin and pancetta risotto, but that's really nothing more than a little bit of squash and a little bit of bacon in it. Secret seems to be firstly with the rice. I had a letter from one lady one day, and she tried to make it with pudding rice. It just doesn't work, and it just doesn't work with the Carolina rice or the Patna rice. You need the special arborio rice, or there's another one called Canarole, which I find quite hard to find unless I'm in Belfast. But the arborio rice, I think if I was to say, if there was one tip in making a risotto, it is the fact that you add the liquid to it really slowly. Now, I would start off in the pan if it's a little bit of oil, and it can be rapeseed oil, which is really good because rapeseed oil has a higher temperature for burning. It means that you're less likely to burn anything if you're starting off with a wee bit of that, even more so than olive oil. But coat it until you get the grains nice and glistening, and then whatever you're adding there, if you're adding mushrooms or if you're adding a little bit of onion, whatever you're popping in there. But then when you come to add the stock to it, it does take a lot of stock, and it does take a bit of time. It's not one of those things you can just pour it off and go away and then come back 15 minutes later. You've got to add it gradually and let the rice absorb all that liquid. The secret, I think, is in making sure that you get it well absorbed before you move on to add some more of it until you get all that liquid into your risotto. The other thing that she mentioned, in fact, 3 people were inquiring about this one, is how can you get it nice and creamy? Well, there's lots of lovely things you can, I mean, obviously the texture will come up nice and creamy as you cook this special sort of rice, but then you can add all sorts of lovely things to it at the end of it. And don't be scared to do that. I mean, even a little dollop of creme fraiche. If you don't mind the calories, you could go for a wee bit of mascarpone cheese. Now, you're about 42% butterfat content there, almost the same as double cream. I grew up on a dairy farm where we had Jersey cows, and that was my job in the summer. I used to separate the milk in the separator into the Jersey cream, and then deliver it to all the hotels and the restaurants in Portrush and Port Stewart. So you got a high butterfat content with mascarpone. That's where I got onto that one, because it has the same butterfat content as that. So if you don't want that, you could add creme fraiche, or you could add a little bit of yogurt. And again, lots of people go for even low-fat yogurt and no-fat yogurt. And just be careful when you add that. I would turn the temperature off completely and just leave it to almost cool down slightly, because some of the yogurts, if you put them into something really, really hot, they'll separate out. And so you're nearly better to just leave it. You can stabilize the yogurt, the no fat or the low fat ones, by blending a little bit of corn flour, or even the McDougall's thickening granules I was telling you about. That would work in it. It stops it almost looking as if it was slightly curdled when you put it into things. So have a go at that one. So many different things you can put into risotto. Gosh, there's again quite a few nice little recipes on the website for you that you could have a little go at there. But again, it's really, I think I would make a risotto and I'd put my favorite things into it. It might be something as simple as different types of mushrooms. I love a mushroom risotto, and I love it to say with squash and things like that, and even a little bit of bacon. Lots of herbs, lots of nice things, lots of lemon, and you'll find a wee splash of wine helps it too. If it gets too thick, you can either thin it down with water or wine, but if you give it a wee bubble, you'll lose all the goodness of the wine. So there you are. So that's the risotto one. Well done, Cullybackey. We're eating lots of risotto, which is very good. We're eating spuds and supporting all the farmers, but there we go. Now, yes, do I have a cookbook that addresses IBS and various things like that? No, not IBS. There was one I wrote called Taste the Good Life, which was this one, which was all sorts of things about eating for a healthy heart, diabetic food, losing weight, how to put on weight, so many different things like that. But I didn't do one on IBS. Thankfully, it's not something that I've had to worry about or be involved with a lot. And I probably have to admit and say, and in fact, I got a lot of letters from different people, one lady in particular who had IBS, and I know quite a few people who do suffer from it. It really comes down very much to managing your own diet. People very much know how far they can push it and what they can do, and there's some things, spicy food and various things, that just seem to upset them completely. I suppose we're back to this sort of basic thing in the diet and trying to get as much fiber simply into the diet as we possibly can. But then again, I understand with IBS, you've just got to seesaw the whole situation and make sure that it's sort of, you know where you are. So no, it's not one that I've written a book on at the moment, but you never know. This is number 14. I wasn't planning to do any more, but you never know what we might do if we have more lockdown, unfortunately. But that's where that one is. Somebody asking about snacks and no eggs and all sorts of things. Gosh, I love snacks because it's really good. You don't have, that was the one thing I noticed when all the kids grew up and then left. You'd sort of, when they were small, you used to be rushing around early in the day to get something made so that when you were doing homework and you were doing this and that, there was something there that was ready. And then you could put it out straight away. And then the kids all left and there's just Bobby and I here. And he's very good at sitting waiting. He doesn't cook. People always laugh and say, I'm sure he's a great cook. He doesn't even know where anything stays, believe it or not. And you'd say, gosh, can't imagine that. And he doesn't take anything to do with the food. There was one day I tripped, you love this story. We were 35 years married and I tripped coming down the stairs. And I was sitting at the bottom of the stairs feeling sorry for myself and crying. And he comes out and he said, are you all right? And I said, yes, I think so. He says, well, sit there and I'll go and get you a cup of tea. So he heads off the kitchen and then he comes back and he says, where's the tea bags? And then he said, do you take sugar? And I thought, well, there you are. There's the mystery of married life. 35 years, he didn't even know if I took sugar. But anyway, not to worry. He would do all those things that I needed and would do his best. But as I say, he's not a cook, not yet, but he'll not starve. He'll be able to. I laugh at him because it used to be before lockdown, anybody that was here, come on in, I'll make you a cup of tea. And he got as far as getting the kettle on, but then he got stuck and he didn't know where anything else was. So I had to go and get it sorted out for him. But sure, there you are. Maybe I ruined him, but isn't it nice to have him to ruin? So, right, snacks. I made a list of some of these things that I loved. Lots of different things that you can use for just so many snacks. I have a lovely little book here and it's on toast. You know, that's one of my favorite things. I love toast and bread and so many different simple things. And the lovely thing is there's so many breads out there now. And I find it hard to get past our good old fashioned soda bread and wheaten bread and all those lovely, ordinary, down to earth things that are made with buttermilk and what have you, which is very good for your digestion. And just so many different things that you can pop together. Another one that's really good for snacks are those tortilla wraps, even for making things like pizzas. If you want a real skinny pizza without going into the trouble of, well, not many people, well, yes, you do if you're doing it for some special, getting out and making the proper yeast ones and the kneading, which takes quite a few hours, a bit like sourdough bread. But you can go out and you can buy just those wraps that we use for putting chicken and tortilla wraps and various things like that with guacamole. And they're really nice. I must tell you, another little story here, because I remember we were out for, there used to be a lovely wee restaurant not far from here, and we went to it one night and I ordered these tortilla wraps with this thing called guacamole. And guacamole is that lovely sort of avocados all mashed down with lots of nice tasty things in it. And on the menu it said it was with guacamole, but obviously they panicked in the kitchen and they didn't have guacamole. But 10 out of 10 to them, because they came out with mushy peas all smashed up and put into the wee pot. And I thought, well done you for thinking, because that was definitely thinking out of the box and say the mushy peas look like guacamole. But anyway, those little tortilla wraps are great. You can do all sorts of things with those. And, you know, I would use those even, you know, those lovely wee patty tins you get, and they can get all sorts of different sizes. You can sort of push those down into the little, cut them out with a cutter into the size you need, push them down in, and you can put all sorts of lovely things into them. You can put sort of, well, the fact that the wraps are ready, you don't need to do anything with, but you can put a wee bit of sort of crispy red onion chutney in there. You could put lots of chicken. You could put anything you wanted over the top of it and just warm them up in the oven, and those are really nice. I had down here, yes, one that I loved was just something as simple as toast with avocado and a little bit of nice sort of soft runny cheese just over the top of it. Really nice sort of melting cheese there that works really well. One of my favorite quick snacks, and this one cooks up so quickly, and it's probably one of my favorite dishes. It's pork sausages with a mustard and a red onion gravy. And you know, for the length of time it takes you to cook a few sausages, you could actually put this together. And this was probably just one of the most popular recipes that we ever did. It's just pork sausages cooked off in the pan.
Jenny.
Sorry, yep. There we are.
I just have another wee bit. Oh yes, yes.
Right, got it now. I need to go higher. Pork sausages cooked in the pan with a little bit of red onion, even a little bit of white onion. And here again I go, because instead of cooking with a bottle of cooking oil in the pan, what I do is I add a little bit of balsamic. Now this is balsamic. There's all sorts of different flavors. It's just a vinegar. But what it does is it coats the food beautifully. It gives it a lovely goldeny brown color. You're not adding all the calories of fat or oil to it. And it keeps all the flavor in the food rather than all the sort of the moisture coming out of the food at the end. And then you can add onions to it, a little bit of mustard, and then serve it up with a little bit of champ. It was just another really nice quick idea. Ooey gooey cheesy sandwiches. Red onion chutney is, there's a lovely caramelized red onion chutney, which is a good buy to have, I think, in your cupboard. That or a jar of a good relish or any type of a chutney. It's really, really handy for putting things together. Sometimes you fancy something really nice and sweet. Peaches, pears, plums, any of those fruits, just lightly cooked in the pan with a tiny wee hint of brown sugar, maybe a wee knob of butter going in there as well, and just cook those round until they're nice and soft, and make yourself a really lovely sort of nice toasted sandwich with toasted bread on that one. Christmas time, we did a lovely one with fruit loaf, just taking the fruit loaf, cutting it into slices, steeping it in a little bit of egg and milk together, almost making a French toast. And then we put lovely wee clementine oranges with it, and it just was really nice with a wee dollop of ice cream over the top of it. Even things like goat's cheese, lovely on top of breads or bruschettas or any of those fancy ones, which are quite nice. Yeah, there's lots of nice tasty ones. And on the subject of maybe even a quick snack, you know, there's nothing nicer than bread. And again, we have a lovely simple recipe in this book for the people who win these. Let me show you what it is when I can find the right book. It's this one. It's in this book here. And it's just bread made with soda bread, self-raising flour. The quickest, easiest bread to make. And I'm going to tell you how you make it, because it is just the flour, probably about a pound of flour into the bowl. I add a handful of spring onions to it because I think spring onions are great for flavor. I know we talk about herbs and basil and rosemary and thyme and all these wonderful fancy things, but you know, spring onions and leeks you'll not go far wrong with, but a good handful of that going in, an egg and buttermilk. And if you want to add a few other things to it, you can add in a little handful of cheese. If you want to put in a little bit of parsley into it, you can. But for a pound of flour, it's a pint of buttermilk. And the lovely thing about this bread is you don't have to turn it out onto the table and knead it. You need the pint of buttermilk in it. And when you mix it around, you'll think, oh, this has all gone too far. It's all a bit runny. But try it, because when you pour this into your tin and bake it in the oven, you will be amazed. It's just the most beautiful, soft, spongy bread that is absolutely delightful. So it's a pound of Neil's soda bread, self-raising flour, pint of buttermilk, an egg. And then after that, if you want to put in a wee splash of olive oil, good handful of spring onions, good handful of parsley. I sometimes, Christmas, we added celery to the bread. We added walnuts. Make it in the summertime with some dried tomatoes and a bit of feta cheese. You can change that simple recipe around, but it's a pound of flour and the pint of buttermilk. So have we go at that one when you sort of get your dinner over and you're coming around to your afternoon tea. Cut up into nice big thick slices, we drop of butter on it, because we do need a wee bit of butter in there too. And somebody's going to say, Jenny, what about butter and polyunsaturated fats? What do you recommend? I recommend using as little as possible. Don't, when you get it on, go back again and take the knife and take a wee bit off. So that doesn't do any harm. And I'm one of those people, I mean, I would probably be reasonably careful about what I eat and healthy eating and all sorts of things. And yet, as probably many of you know, I was one of those people who ended up a couple of years ago with a triple heart bypass, because I was just one of those unfortunate people. that it happened to. I lost my father at 45 with a coronary thrombosis. And unfortunately, it runs in our family. And the strange thing was, when I was in hospital having the operation, my younger brother, who's a dentist, was in hospital at the same time, having exactly the same operation. But as I say, that was a couple of years ago. And as I said, I did what it said in the tin, which was why at that time, I know you were doing something on Cullybackey and I wasn't able to work with you. You were doing a demonstration, I think, up in the school. So I was being very good and behaving myself and doing what it said. And it was, people said, did I get bored? I didn't. I sat in the settee for, as it said, for six weeks and behaved myself and did everything. And I have to say I'm amazing and feel really, really well and thankful to be good from there. So still able to garden and do all sorts of things. I think we're near the end of the questions. Were there any others, Joanne, that I've left out here?
There was a couple of questions just came in after those ones I emailed to you.
Okay, let's see.
So we'll put you in the spot a wee bit here. We had a lady, Kathleen, who asked about ideas for recipes to use star anise.
Oh, right. Star anise, yeah, lovely.
Star anise, probably not.
Yeah, it's not absolutely. It's a lovely wee spice. It's those lovely. It's a lovely Christmas one. We did a lovely recipe at Christmas with that. It was clementine salmon, but you could also, it doesn't have to be at Christmas. We simply did it salmon with a nice big chunk of salmon, put a little bit of teriyaki sauce over the top of it, which is this little sprinkling of soft brown sugar. And I mean, just a little dusting, star anise and a clementine orange over the top of it and baked it in the oven. And it was just the loveliest recipe and flavor for a Christmas dish. The other thing I would use it in, and you can, it's quite a strong licoricey flavor. Don't overdo it. You'll find in a recipe probably one of those, 1 to 2 is really quite enough. It's lovely in a fruit salad recipe. And in fact, there's a lovely fruit salad recipe in here, which I put it into. And it was blackberries, plums, apples, all gently poached together with star anise and cinnamon stick. You find it's a sort of a Christmassy spice. It's not something I would use a lot in summer cooking, but it's nice to have, and it just looks lovely on top of dishes. It makes a lovely garnish, but don't overdo it.
Okay, thank you very much. 2 more questions. One of them from Carla, and she has asked, has lockdown inspired any new recipes or old amended recipes?
Oh, funny, yes, I saw that one coming in. Gosh, Carla, thanks for that query. You know, Carla, I probably think about food, and it's crazy. Most of the time, I'm always looking at things and changing things around and looking at what I'm doing. What I'm working on at the moment is a whole selection of lovely new recipes, very much geared towards obesity. And I think during this lockdown, this is something that has really come home to roost with an awful lot of people. And I think we're all sort of just trying to do that little bit extra with all the guidelines there are and trying to eat food to build up our immunity, to feel well and realize that most of our immunity starts within our gut, and, you know, eating yogurts and eating all the right sorts of foods there that keep the whole sort of system working really, really well. I suppose without coming up with any particular recipe, I think I have very much turned my head towards that sort of side of things, trying to make things even that little bit healthier. There's certain foods I have that I think are buzz foods, and I think at that top of that list, I put porridge oats. I think porridge oats are just one of the best things we can have. And it saves you worrying and sort of sitting in the morning, reading all these packets and thinking how many calories are in this or how much fat is in that and so on. You've got something there that's totally so good for your cholesterol, just such a healthy ingredient to use. And I've been looking at that even in relation to, I've been working with that on, you know, making lovely sort of breakfast muffins with porridge oats and lots of different things like that, toppings using porridge oats, taking out all those things that are really high fat and going from there. So that's the twist I am on the moment.
Great, thank you. And a last question, which I think is probably quite a nice one to be finishing up on, and maybe going to put you in the spot a wee bit here, but
how much weight have I put on since lockdown?
Nothing just as personal as that now. But Pammy has asked, what is your favourite recipe?
What is my favourite recipe? Do you know, I probably, it depends where I am, and you know, the things I like to eat at different times. People will often say, what's your favourite food? And it depends where I am or what the situation is. There's sometimes all I want is just a good cup of tea and a nice scone sitting down there. There's sometimes I want a nice piece of salmon. Probably I love things like salmon, I love broccoli, I love spinach and various things like that. But there's one recipe that I love and I keep going back to it. And it was again in the very first book that I wrote, and some of you will probably know it. It was called Dramona Chicken. And it was created at the stage when the kids were tiny and you needed something to make really quickly. And it was chicken cooked in the pan with a little bit of onion and a few vegetables thrown into it. And then you thicken the chicken up with a tin of that soup that you used to buy that was condensed. And then on top of that, you could put whatever you want. You could put pastry, you could put potatoes and what have you. Now, I have taken that recipe of simple Dramona chicken based on that, and I would make that quite a lot. Don't always use the chicken soup in it, but the chicken with the vegetables in it, it kind of broccoli, it kind of leeks, you can sort of bulk it out and doing different things. When you make up the sauce, you can either make a nice white sauce and put different things into it. You can use your chicken soup. You can add mascarpone cheese to it, which really makes it taste very, very good, but not the healthiest. You can add a bit of asparagus to it. It's just my most versatile recipe that I have ever used. And I keep going back to it. And, it was really quite funny. We got an email at one stage. It was being used in Washington, in the White House, for a luncheon. There was a lady who had come to Northern Ireland. She had relations who lived up the Dreen Road. I better get this right. She was the chairman of IMF, not MFI, which is the International Monetary Fund, not MFI. And when she'd gone back to Washington, she'd remembered this dish that I'd cooked for her, and she wanted the recipe because she was going to organise that being cooked up for a lunch. So there you are. So Dramona chicken went from the Dreen Road in Cullybackey to the White House. So there you go.
Brilliant. Your recipes travel all over the place.
I don't know about that, but anyway, it's been good.
Folks, listen, that was absolutely brilliant, and I hope I haven't missed anybody's questions now that were sent in. I think we've covered all of those questions, and I know we're just a wee bit after 1, but I just wonder if Jenny's okay. We'll maybe take a few minutes if anybody has any more questions there that maybe haven't been answered. Any questions? Just shout or put your hand up, or all happy enough.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead, Una. Yeah.
Oh, hello, Una.
Hi, hello, Jenny. Jenny, do you use the alternate milks much? I have had. I'm gluten free, and I have had to go off milks and creams. Can't even tolerate the soya milk anymore.
Really?
So I'm on to almond milk.
I was going to say almond milk, yeah.
Yeah, but it's the tricky one. You have to be so careful with it. When you warm it, it curdles slightly.
Yeah.
But then when you go to the rice and the oat, I have found I can't make gluten-free oats. But when you go to the rice milk or the oat milk or the coconut milk, they're so watery. They're very hard to get a creamy consistency with anything.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those things, I suppose, like playing around with. The almond milk, it's sort of the best of a bad lot, nearly, if you know what I mean.
I was just going to say the almond milk, Anna. To me, it almost appears creamier. Now, what you could possibly do, these granules, McDougall's granules, are gluten free, and it might be worth exploring with that, adding a little bit of it to it. Where I know what you're saying when it goes really thin and it looks awful and watery in various sauces. No, I know it's a hard one. It really is a hard one.
Yeah, it's hard to get right.
So many people are celiac and gluten free. It's just become so common. So common.
Yes, very much so. And I know I would use like the corn flour because I hadn't heard of the granules you're talking about, and until I can get in and read the labels myself. You're talking about Bobby not cooking. I have one of those as well. And
it must be down our road. There's something in the air.
Michael's just come in the door. He was shopping, so he goes and does the shopping. So it's whatever's on the list. And then I'm always saying as he goes out the door, and if you see anything nice, well, what does that mean? you know, making myself.
Like a box
Yeah.
of chocolates.
So it's if it's not on the list, it doesn't come in. So things like that that are new, then I'm not getting the chance to get out and check up on.
Yeah.
But frustrating, you know. But it's just one of those things. You can work with the almond milk. It tastes okay. It just doesn't look very nice. So can you use those granules then in sweets, sweet dishes as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they work really, really well. Yes, no, they're good. I know.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, Steve.
Yes, thank you. You too.
Thanks very much. Maybe just time we'll take just one more question. If there's one more person who wants to ask something. Okay. Everybody's getting hungry. It's getting near lunchtime.
Do you want me to pick 5 names from? Do you want me, or will we do it, Joanne, and then you will pick the winners of the books?
Yeah, listen, happy to do it anyway, or do you want to pick out 5 names from that list?
Or shall I? Do you want me to do it now and get all very excited?
Do it now, and you've included those last couple of names there, Kathleen Wilson and Pammy.
Okay. Kathleen Wilson.
And Pammy.
Pammy. Oh, Pammy. Right. Okay. All right. I'll just start at the top here. Work our way through. We've got I picked 5. We've got Teresa Graham. We've got Mo Miller.
Mo Miller, yeah.
We've got see where we are. Alma Southers.
Yeah.
Hilary Smith.
Hillary, yeah.
Who else have we got on your list?
So we just need one more. So we've got Jeanette, Joanne Miller, Joan Fisco, Margaret Murphy, Kathleen Wilson, and Pammy.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what you do. I will sign a book for all of them, and we will send them out to them. Or can I give them to you to give out to people, or what will we do? We've got about 10, haven't we?
There's about 10 there altogether. Yes.
Okay. Well, I will sign a book for everybody, and we will give them all a book, and then they can all start cooking.
Jenny.
Brilliant, thank you.
Fantastic. There you go. Well done, everybody.
Brilliant.
Keep cooking, everybody, and keep well and keep safe.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks very much. Cheerio, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.